Hello, my name is Eliott. I am a filmmaker, but more so than that, I am a collector of films and a watcher of movies. So these are some movies that I like. Animal Kingdom. Had to start with Animal Kingdom. This was, for many years, my favorite movie of all time. I saw this for the first time when it came out in theaters in 2010. I was going to film school in Southern California and saw it at a little indie movie house. This movie just completely blew me away. I instantly fell in love with David Michôd as a director, Ben Mendelsohn, Jackie Weaver. This is the movie that really broke Ben Mendelsohn into American movies. This is an Australian film, but this kind of really put him on the map as far as being a marketable character actor here in the States. You don't get him as General Krennic in Rogue One without his performance in Animal Kingdom. I love so much about this film, and really just I'm a huge fan of crime films, and I love specifically the genre of suburban crime films. Slice of life movies where crime is a background element of it, and you as the audience don't fully understand what is happening, but you know you're dealing with very dangerous people and very intense situations. So much of the way this story is told and the way it's directed just had a profound influence on my own filmmaking and the way I write scripts and the way I try to tell stories, kind of using as little as possible and just kind of trusting the audience to piece it together and figure out what is happening. I think it's just so masterfully done. One of the best first feature films I can think of, or that I've ever seen. Jackie Weaver, especially in this film, is just so scary. It's a shame that Hollywood hasn't really figured out what to do with her. She deserves so much more, and it's just the performance of a lifetime. But Animal Kingdom, that is an absolute banger of a movie. The Ipcress File. This was a blind buy. This was just something I picked up, I think, when Kino Lorber was having a sale. If you don't know Kino Lorber, by the way, that is possibly my favorite boutique film label. Their selection of movies is fantastic. They span all different types of genres, all different decades, and their presentation and just the physical product itself, so high quality and so inexpensive. Kino Lorber, if you don't know, now you know. But yeah, The Ipcress File, Michael Caine. I've been on a big Michael Caine kick lately. The first of his series, Harry Palmer, kind of the working man's James Bond, whereas James Bond was a very flashy, gets the girl and drives fast cars and has cool gadgets. Harry Palmer is just kind of the everyman spy who's just trying to survive in the circus. When this movie came out, people were very critical about it because Michael Caine, though he's, played very cool, very slick characters before, was essentially playing him like a nerd and very not traditionally masculine. There's a scene in the film where he is getting to know the femme fatale type character, and rather than, buying her a drink and having his way with her, he invites her over to his house and cooks her a meal. And it's just so not typically what was done in that genre, and people thought that was just so effeminate somehow, but the way it's shot is so expertly crafted and just some of the dirtiest frames you'll ever see in a movie. They were playing around with this whole idea of the Cold War and conspiracy and espionage, and the idea that there were hidden cameras and hidden microphones. There's this one amazing shot where you're looking at this guy through a tiny box window and you're like, what is that? And halfway through the scene, he reaches forward towards the camera and lifts the telephone off the receiver, and you realize you've been looking at the gap between the phone and the dial. Mind-blowing. Really cool, very 60s. And I think there's 5 or 6 Harry Palmer films. I haven't seen the others. I look forward to, but Ipcress File. Let's see here. The Messenger, the story of Joan of Arc by Luc Besson starring Mila Jovovich. I saw this movie as a kid when it came out. I was big into The Fifth Element. My mom really liked that movie, my friends, and this was his follow-up to that, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember watching it as a kid and not getting it at all. And I think it got pretty panned by critics and everybody as just kind of like, what the hell was that movie about? Kind of dreamy, kind of psychedelic. It's telling the story of Joan of Arc really from the perspective of maybe she wasn't actually talking to God, maybe she just had really severe mental health delusions and issues. Watching it as an adult with a bit more life perspective and certainly just a better appreciation for film and the craft of cinema, I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of his best movies. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. And if you did see it when it came out and you didn't like it, give it a rewatch. I saw so much more in this film recently when I watched it a couple months ago than I did watching it when it came out. And I was a child when it came out, but it's really harrowing, and just the action, the spectacle of it all, the editing, it's just so like explosive and in your face. And as far as like medieval epics go, this is like top tier for me. There's one that I'm looking for. There we go. Oh yeah. Revolution. I had to watch this movie sophomore or junior year of high school for history class. This is the story of the American Revolutionary War, as told from the perspective of a Scottish immigrant played by Al Pacino. So the biggest problem with this film is Al Pacino's Scottish accent. And this was his follow-up to Scarface. I believe he made this right after Scarface. So there are moments in the film where you can see him still kind of muscling out some Tony Montana. This came out 85, I believe. So middle of, the Reagan era and this newfound sense of patriotism in the US. And here comes a movie about, the birth of the country, essentially. And rather than it being this, sweeping, epic, triumphant, patriotic love letter to America, it's a very grounded, gritty, handheld, dirty movie about colony civilians being conscripted into a war they want nothing to do with and getting blown to bits and all this PTSD. It really takes a critical look at American politics, but any politics or any leadership that involves turning civilians into soldiers, and the trauma and the way that tears apart a community, a country, people, families, everything. I just think it's such a beautiful film. It's an epic. It's directed by Hugh Hudson, who did Chariots of Fire and Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, which are also excellent films I would recommend. But this is one of my absolute favorite movies. There's a very important kind of father-son dynamic that is at the heart of the film. And there's a scene where Al Pacino's character rescues his son from the British, and his son has been tortured, and it's basically this, I want to say it's like a 5-minute unbroken kind of close-up two-shot of the two of them, and it's just so heart-wrenching and so beautiful, and the acting is so earnest and raw, and it's just, I get weepy thinking about it. Do not watch the director's cut. Watch the theatrical cut. For the director's cut, they cut about 20 minutes out of the film and added a voiceover narration that completely undercuts all the beautiful character stuff and just lays it all out on the floor. They essentially did a reverse Blade Runner on the film. It's a misdirection. I don't know why they decided to do that, but the theatrical cut of Revolution. Oh yeah. I think we're at 4. Let's do one more. Should we do Judgment Night? We'll do Judgment Night. Judgment Night. Oh yeah. I'm a huge Stephen Hopkins fan. Predator 2, one of my favorite movies of all time. I think he's an underappreciated or underrepresented director. I think I think it's a tie between this and Blown Away for his magnum opus. He brings a kinetic craziness to all of his films that just, it lights up something in me. I can't really explain what that is, but Judgment Night, if you haven't seen it, fantastic romp. I think people know the soundtrack more than they know the actual film. And it all takes place in one night. Characters essentially going to see a football game or a basketball game.
It's a bunch of guys going to a boxing match, that's it.
And they take a wrong turn down a bad alley, witness a murder, and then are on the run for their lives trying to survive the night. They all get picked off one by one in very inventive ways. Dennis Leary plays the antagonist of the film who's trying to track them down, and it's a very unhinged Dennis Leary performance. I think this movie does a really great job of capturing a city at night in the wee hours when everything is locked down and closed and there's nobody on the street, and there's kind of this freedom, but also this sense that there could be danger lurking behind any corner. It's shot by Peter Levy. The way he can move a camera and create this sense of vertigo and verticality, just intensity through the lens and the movement, and make you feel like you're on a roller coaster. It's unparalleled cinematography. Such a fun time. If you haven't seen Judgment Night, do yourself a favor. That's definitely a movie to not be missed. Collecting movies is kind of my hobby, you know, it's probably the thing I spend the most money on in my life. I love blind buying things based off of a recommendation or a poster or a trailer. Oh, I've never heard of that. What is that? Let me try it out. And it's just been a very fun way to appreciate cinema, to learn about movies, to learn filmmaking. Movies are the best. So watch more movies.